Welcome to Bespoken Bones with your host, Pavini Moray, connecting ancestors, sex, magic and science. Pavini explores transpersonal tools for erotic wellness every new and full moon, engaging educators, healers, spiritual leaders and scientists in revolutionary dialogue. Get ready to feel good and go deep. This is Bespoken Bones.
Hi, and welcome to Bespoken Bones, ancestors at the crossroads of sex, magic, and science. We are in the business of healing trauma, connecting with our roots, and developing radiant erotic wellness in past, present, and future generations. And I am your host, Pavini Moray. And today I am delighted to introduce you to Seyta Selter. And Seyta is a good friend of mine and also a colleague in the ancestral lineage repair work. She has a master's in East-West psychology, and she practices a variety of embodied dreamwork practices and hypnotherapy. She's adjunct faculty at the Evergreen State College in psychology and anthropology of dreams and consciousness studies. And she, as I said, is a certified practitioner of Dr. Daniel Forrest's ancestral lineage repair method, and she's also Daniel's assistant. She is the co-founder of NORD, which stands for the Non-Ordinary Reality Database, which is a citizen science project and an online journaling, indexing, and community space for dreams and dreamlike experiences, which is aiming to serve as the Google of the collective unconscious. And we're going to hear a little bit more about that later. Seyta is an avid dreamer, and she has been practicing dream and waking lucidity, following the guidance of her dreams and maintaining a dream journal for the last 20 years. She's an advocate and explorer of the capacity we have as living human beings to engage with unseen resources and worlds through our inner perceptions for wholeness, beauty, knowledge, direction, and personal and cultural healing. And her ancestors are people of Ashkenazi and Sephardic Jewish, Western European, and British Islander descent, and she currently resides in Olympia, Washington, the native lands of the Coast Salish, Lushootseed-speaking peoples. So, Seyta, welcome. So happy to be able to spend this bit of time with you.
Hi, Pavini. It's such a delight to be here. I'm a huge fan of Bespoken Bones, so I'm really excited to talk to you about all these things.
Well, it's interesting. I'm writing this dissertation on ancestors and exploring techniques of connection that folks from all over the world and traditions from all over the world have with their ancestors. And there's these certain themes that are coming up. And one of them is dreams, the practice of connecting with our ancestors through our dreams. So I'm super excited to talk with you about that. But I really want to start with this NORD thing because like the Google of the collective unconscious, like, oh my gosh, I want to hear more about that. So would you just talk a little bit about what you're doing there?
Yeah, we want that, right? So this NORD project, the Non-Ordinary Reality Database, is kind of the inspired mind child of my colleague Daniel Reconnecting, who's a depth psychologist as well as a computer programmer, and I came on board later. This is a place we both recognize the need for a place to record our experiences, both dreams and other kinds of dreamlike subjective experiences that we have, like meditations and ancestral experiences and trance experiences. And so the NORD project is a place where people can journal about these first-person experiences and then do a lot of different things with that. So there's a community space. There's also ways to research, so you can use it kind of as an index where if you notice that you are having a lot of dreams over time about, say, cats, you can go in and say, show me all the dreams that I've had about cats and see them all at once. Or you can also say, show me all the dreams that others are having about cats and compare yours to those. So part of what is cool about NORD that's really exciting and why we are thinking of it as kind of the Google for the collective unconscious is that it's going out and indexing all of the public records that people have already recorded on the internet about their dreams and also different experiences. It's also looking at the Erowid database on entheogenic and other altered experiences. And it's looking at, I think it's currently looking at about 250,000 records on the internet. So you can compare what's happening. You can see trends in what's happening. You can really kind of start sifting through those things. And it's exciting because the way that Daniel has programmed it, it's also using this natural language processing. So you can say, show me some experiences that people are having in dreams and also in meditations about birds, and it will pull in all of these experiences. Even if the user wrote like falcon, it'll understand that as birds, and it also reads emotional cues and things like that. And so we're really, really excited to have it out there and are developing several different applications for it, for individual users and communities. And also it's an open science platform for anyone wanting to go in and research these things. So it's super exciting.
That's amazing. When you were speaking, did you ever see that film that came out in the early 90s, Until the End of the World, the Wim Wenders film?
Yeah, I love that film.
Yeah, there's that scene where they're like, I don't know, they're in Iceland or the Antarctic or somewhere. It's like somewhere really cold and snowy, and they go into that cavern to find the dream images, and that every dream is like captured in this like beautiful glistening, I don't know, it kind of looks like mica, these what's it called? Like not an X-ray, but like a film negative of the dream. And that's kind of what it reminded me of. Like, you're creating in reality this thing that can be really useful for folks who are wanting to be able to trace these experiences across, right? That it's not going to be culturally specific. There's going to be this way that it's that, what is that called? The noosphere, right? The way, yeah. That's so cool. So beautiful. Thanks for doing that. I'm really grateful to know that somebody's doing that.
Yeah, it's interesting. Daniel and I have both noticed that no one else seems to really be working on something like this that encompasses more experiences than just dreams. There are several places on the internet focusing on journaling for dreams, and others about, like Erowid, and others for kind of meditation and shamanic type experiences. But there isn't this bigger umbrella, and there are so many connections. It's like these different types of experiences are potentially coming from the same places, or, we really want to see interaction between them and connection between all of them. So it's a wonderful kind of lifelong project that we both feel incredibly honored to be called to usher into existence. It's open right now for kind of beta testing and learning more information about it at nordglobal.net. So anyone is welcome to go there and sign up for it. It's free for the public to check it out. So it's pretty exciting.
Yeah, that's super great. And I love it when kind of the esoteric or the woo meets the like super geeky science stuff. It's just great. I'm curious, like, you have 20 years of dream journals. And I kind of want to lead into hearing a little bit of your story, your personal story with ancestral healing, and kind of the big themes of healing that you've done with that, and how they happened. And I'm just also going to invite you to weave in the personal pieces of the connections that you've made through your own dream work during that time as you've been doing this ancestral healing process. So maybe, yeah, kind of like talk us through how it's been to be you doing this work.
Yeah, that's a big one. So I was fortunate to start really paying attention and working with my dreams at a young age. And in fact, I was thinking recently, my first memory was actually a dream, and that made me feel nice to realize that. And an alligator bit off my thumb, and it also made me think that, wow, my first memory was not only a dream, but it was a dream for something that I had no context for as a baby, an alligator, which I had never encountered in this present experience of life so far. But so I've been following my dreams for a long time, and I started working with ancestral work much later than I started working with dreams. And I really view dreaming, and have grown to view dreaming over the years, as it just gets more and more mysterious and more full of potential and realizations that it is such a truly multivarious space. So many things. Dreaming is a function of so many things and portals, and doing ancestral work really streams into a dreaming practice, because dreaming is one way that ancestors can be in touch with us in a really meaningful way. And I really like trusting and being guided with my dreams, and have done that consciously as a practice for 20 years, which has just brought nothing but the right lessons and joys and direction on my own life path into my life. And I've noticed, as a teacher and someone who has studied different dreaming traditions, that in, I think, kind of all of them, it's usually a sideline mention that, oh yeah, one thing that happens in dreams is that your dead family comes to talk to you. That's common. That's cool. And I've been really taking note of that, because there have been some people who have focused more on ancestors and coming into dreams, but it seems to be quite a common occurrence for folks in various cultures, and given weight more in some cultures than others. And kind of a side note in Western dream traditions of, oh yeah, also dead people come to you in your dreams sometimes. But in my own work, as I said, I've been guided by my dreams, and I will literally just take things from my dreams and bring them into my waking reality, which I think is an incredibly powerful and basic way to acknowledge the importance of dreams and work with them. Like things literally, like I remember in my dream last night that I was wearing a yellow shirt, and there was a kind of a yellow vibe to it. I will consciously wear a yellow shirt, which I'm doing right now, because I did have a dream like that last night. And those little movements are actually big movements in showing your dreaming life that you value it. And I'm sort of speaking in a quite roundabout way about your question, but the ancestors often come into dreams and help instruct, and it's a nice place for them to have clear communication, where your conscious mind is generally out of the picture unless you're engaging in a lucid dreaming practice. And they can really communicate with you in a way where you're not worried about if you're making it up, or if there are projections that you're putting on the situation. Of course, you do have the task of often kind of sorting through dream symbolism and cool dreamy things to get clear messages. But yeah, and often ancestors will show up in various ways in dreams, like as animals, or in my case, often I'll have a felt sense that I was having an ancestral message in a dream, and what is happening in the dream is involving gemstones or other stones that I'm interacting with, that I'm perceiving as messages from my ancestors. So it's not always kind of straight, here's this person showing up and communicating, but it's quite a fruitful place for a lot of spiritual guidance to happen, including from the ancestors, for sure.
Well, I'm curious about that. I think I know what you mean, but I would love it if you would speak just a little bit more to, how do I know if the dream I'm having is ancestral?
Yeah, that can be tricky. I don't know that there's a litmus test for that other than your felt sense. And then also in your waking life, consciously thanking your ancestors for the dream and see what happens. I think dreaming is part of a communication cycle that has been recognized throughout human history with the unseen. So some of the things that living humans do to communicate with spirits and spiritual guidance are we make offerings, we do rituals, we do divination techniques, we do prayers. That's on the living human side of this communication cycle, and the ancestors and other spirits and higher self, or however you want to think of these things, they communicate back by synchronicities and by dreams and by various kinds of omens, which, I mean, in our Western terms, we tend to just think of as synchronicities, but signs in nature and unlikely occurrences that confirm messages and those kinds of things. So if you have a dream that you're not sure is ancestral, but you think it might be, a great thing to do is to thank your ancestors with an offering and then see if you have a reflection back, and really just be open to perceptions that you continue to receive about the content of the dream or the feelings of the dream, or whatever you're relating it to. I think the more spaciousness you can have without trying to put a meaning or interpretation on dreaming experiences, the better off you'll be, and the more guidance you will receive. This attitude of open curiosity and respect and perceiving in these ways is really important to get messages, but also get the reverberations and different permutations of messages. A lot of times dream messages and information in dreams is multi-layered and multi-contextual throughout time, and just being open and even looking at the same dream at different times, and being open to dreaming not being confined by time is really helpful. I like to use my dream journal. One practice I love that I highly recommend is, if you do keep a dream journal, which is a fantastic practice to do, is to practice divination through dream oracle, meaning if you have a question, grab one of your past dream journals at random and just flip to a page and just commit to the idea that the dream that you read is a message about the situation that you're in right now. It's absolutely fascinating what can happen with that. And that's a really fun way to engage dreams, and kind of a treat if you have a dream journal practice.
That's a great practice. I love I love when the practices are really doable, right?
Mm-hmm.
I want to go back to this thing you said about the yellow shirt, and draw that a little bit. In my experience of trauma, one of the things that gets lost is that ability to trust our experience, right? That I can actually trust my experience. And what I really heard you saying in that was like, well, hell, I don't know, like, why yellow shirt is important. It actually doesn't matter. It's not like I'm trying to, I'm not being like super ungrounded and just being like, oh yes, the yellow shirt is the next step of my evolution. It's not like that, right? You're just saying, right, like, hey, I am paying homage to the fact that I have a spiritual life. I have an internal rich landscape that I reflect in my outer reality. Right. And I think that there's a healing movement here that I just want to highlight, that is one way to regenerate the trust that is lost through trauma. Yeah. Would you agree?
Yeah. I think that bringing any small thing from a dream experience that feels good. I mean, don't pick the really scary, horrible thing. Don't, invite that, but just any kind of benign detail or something that is positively charged from a dream, bringing that into your waking life is really a message to, if you want to call it your unconscious or whatever, that you value inner experiences. And the more you do that, it is a trust building cycle and a trust in yourself process, where what you're doing by doing little practices like that is saying, I'm interested in being the holistic person that I actually am, and incorporating, even if I don't understand it with my dominant rational intellectual mind, I'm incorporating the other parts of wisdom and curiosity and imagination that are truly a part of me that I experience when I dream. I'm incorporating those and integrating them with my identity and with my regular waking self. And I think that can be a really foundational, healthy, and healing process for gaining trust in yourself and reconstituting yourself in a more holistic way. And it's a it's a really fun and easy practice too. And I really like that about it. It's not needing to understand or interpret anything from dreams or having any education about dreams. It's almost like a fun game that adds, it's like a delightful little sparkly thing to add to your day, to carry over something from a dream and then just be curious about it. Or, I mean, I don't know if I'll have any profound experiences because I'm wearing a yellow shirt, but I do feel like I feel in integrity with myself from whatever I was doing last night in dreams. It's like I'm welcoming that in my experience today.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. I had a synchronicity just as you said that. Just as you said
Aha.
sparkly, I looked over and there's a bottle of champagne on my desk, and it's called
Excellent.
Sparkle. And I, like, as you said sparkly, I saw sparkle. I was like, oh yes, we're doing
Aha.
it right now. It's happening in real
It's
time.
happening right now. Yeah.
So I want to hear a little bit more about, you've done a lot of ancestral healing work internally with your bloodlines, as well as with your family, with your mom,
Mm-hmm.
as well as with your genealogy. And I'd love to, like, I feel like sometimes we get a little on the woo side of things on the
Mm-hmm.
show. And like, I would love to just hear how some of those practices, like I know you did a road trip, and how some of that has had impact, what you did and how it's had impacts. Yeah.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So in this work that we do, we're moving from the ancient past in a visionary sense into the future, working with old well guides in our ancestral lineages and doing healing toward the present. It gets really interesting when you engage in genealogical research and family history research and just general cultural research about where your people come from, where you're essentially moving with a different part of your mind, with your research-oriented mind, from the present into the past. And yeah, as you've mentioned, I've done a lot of genealogy, and my mom is also engaged in that process, and it's a wonderful thing to do together. I've really noticed a lot of synchronicities and super weird, cool things happening, engaging both of those processes together and grounding family work, ancestral work, in a practice of genealogy. If you have the privilege to be able to access your family history, like I know who my parents are, and there are records going back a few generations for some of my family lines. Doing that kind of work can sometimes really confirm or give grounding to some of the experiences that one has during the more visionary and embodied ancestral work. And also the ancestral work can really inform the genealogy work too. Like you mentioned, I went on a big road trip with my mom that was essentially a genealogy tour in Illinois and Tennessee, where her people were most recently. And part of that, we were able to visit grave sites of several of my ancestors going back 5 and 6 generations, which was pretty profound. Being able to visit graves of these ancestors that I hadn't done ancestral healing with yet at the time, I had a real sense of kind of intuitively their state of being at their grave sites, and felt, just intuitively felt some shifting when I was able to show up at their memorial place and say, I see you, I intend to do healing with you if needed, and I honor you as my ancestor and thank you for your life. It is because of you that I am here. Those practices I was able to do with my mom. We were both able to say that at several graves, and that was incredibly impactful. And we also found out a lot of kind of dirty, dark secrets about some folks in our lineage, including some imprisonment and assault perpetrated by my ancestors, and things that were really useful to find out and very interesting and also that are kind of bookmarks for me in the healing process. I feel like engaging in ancestral healing alongside genealogy is really supportive because I don't feel inclined to be stuck in the traumas that I'm finding out about, both perpetrated and received by my people, which I think is a pitfall of genealogical work. It's very easy to get re-traumatized by traumas that are still flowing through your, if you want to say, epigenetic self in your own body. And it's easy to identify with the pain of your ancestors that you find out about, and guilt about your ancestors. And so I like the process in tandem is really supportive. And also there's been several circumstances of doing the ancestral healing work seems to have synchronistically caused, although cause isn't a very accurate word to use with synchronicity, but there's some distinct correlations that have happened when engaging in ancestral healing in a specific lineage and in tandem working on genealogy. This ancestral healing seems to often trigger the ancestors who are working on healing to release information in the form of genealogy paperwork to you, at almost as if it's a reward for doing healing or something. And that's happened to myself and many people that I've talked to doing this work. So that's also kind of fascinating as well.
I would love to hear of an example of it. Like, what's happened for you?
Well, actually, there's this incredible sequence of events that happened when I was actively doing healing in the lineage of my mother's people. I was able to access quite a bit of information and genealogically, and was working really intensely with them in spirit. And there was quite a lot of a sense of being beaten down and really deep wounds in the lineage, starting with the beginning of patriarchy, which was really fascinating to tap into on an intuitive level. But so I'm in the deep process of working through healing in this lineage, and my mom is simultaneously engaging in genealogy with this lineage. And I remember working through this lineage at one of Daniel Foer's intensives that actually we were at together, I believe, Pavini, in the Bay Area. And I had a big breakthrough in which there was a trauma in my visionary work that I was perceiving from one of my more recent ancestors, my great-great-great-great-grandmother. And I learned, I had a sense intuitively that there was a child that she either felt guilty about its death or lost. There was something about her feelings of guilt and shame. And at this scene in which she was at a sink where she was bathing the child, and I couldn't tell if the child had drowned or if she was bathing the child after it had died. But I was really tapped into this intuitive scene and her feelings in it, which were deeply sad and shameful and guilty. And it didn't make sense in the timeline of what we had known genealogically for her to have had a child at that time, because it was very clearly in my intuition a kitchen scene from a particular time. And so I was able to kind of pinpoint it in time. And then during that work, that breakthrough and the healing with that child and her, there was a new record uncovered that was pointing at her having given birth to 4 children and having 3 living children, which was the first we had heard of that. And it correlated with the timeline of what happened in the kitchen. And it was so beautiful because this child was kind of acknowledged possibly in historical record. And it was a huge emotional shift for this child to be acknowledged in the intuitive work with this ancestor of mine. And her life story was absolutely incredible. And she she lost all of her children as adults right after they gave birth to their own children, and she raised two, at least two generations of the women in my family. And then she doesn't like me to dwell on this, I will say, but it's okay to use as an instructional story. She committed suicide on her 75th birthday, and I say she doesn't like me to dwell on this. That is the sense that I have of her being well in spirit now and not defining her by her suicide. Um, it's really interesting to mention because that the sense that I had was that the child that had passed haunted her, and so it was pretty incredible to find what looked like that child in the historical record. And also during that time, the story also ties into dreams. I was really intensely in this process, and I was fortunate enough to have the spaciousness to do that primarily as I was in graduate school at the time and focusing on healing as a primary thing in my life. And so I was really focused on this. And I was also working part-time for an employer. And at that time, the employer had a dream that they told me about that that I was occupied in this closet and not really available right now. And it was I was there with some other women, and they remembered what the woman looked like. That was the primary woman involved. And in the dream that they had, the woman did something very specific that they didn't understand. And so they told me about this dream. And the thing in the dream that the woman did that was specific was something that my grandmother had done with me. And you'll notice I'm not sharing the specifics of this because one thing about dreaming is that unless you have explicit permission, it's really not okay to share the dreams of others. And so I'm using this as an example in my experience, but I want to preserve that. But anyway, the dream told me that it was a message that I was occupied with this lineage, and I wasn't quite as available to do work at that time. And then I was really curious about it, and so I asked them if they remembered what the woman looked like, and they said yeah. And so I showed them a picture of my grandmother and her mother and family, and the woman was actually my great grandmother, Pansy Green. They recognized her from the picture immediately. I was kind of thinking it might be my grandmother, but it wasn't. It was my great grandmother in the dream. And then right after that, my mom unearthed a quilt made by my great grandmother that we didn't even know we had, that was off in a box. And that quilt is a gorgeous quilt, and it actually is quilted in this flower pattern, this flower garden quilt pattern that looks like the embodiment of what the blessings in that lineage intuitively are like. The blessings in this lineage appear to me as cascades of flowers. It's very beautiful. And so kind of at the end of this research genealogy process and making space in my own life for this process and this dream of someone else relating to my process, this physical synchronistic thing occurred, which is actually a quilt that is the embodiment of the blessings of this lineage that I can literally wrap around myself. So that's a very long-winded but beautiful story of an example of kind of some of these things tying together a little bit.
Yeah, I really appreciate the example. I think that it brings it home a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And I have had my own share of those just incredulous experiences with ancestors and genealogy. It's like, wait, what? Like, oh, this is real?
Uh-huh.
Oh, so
Whoa.
like cool. And I remember when it first started happening, our teacher Daniel was like, Pavini, don't act so surprised. It's rude.
Yeah.
So I've had to like tone it down on this surprise level, but it's like, it's such beautiful confirmation, right? If we do the work and then these things show up in really unexpected ways. Yeah. So thanks so much for, the vulnerability behind sharing from your own personal
Yeah.
experience. I really appreciate it. I'm sure that folks listening do as well. I want to turn the attention towards the erotic, if that feels okay.
Sure. May I add something quickly to what you just said,
totally.
though? So the other thing that does as you become less and less surprised by those things is it begins to really normalize the other ways of knowing that we have naturally as human beings, and kind of going back to bringing something from your dreaming life into your waking life. Acknowledging those experiences and having more and more of these kind of synchronistic experiences with research and dreams and all the ancestral stuff is really serving the higher function of reclaiming the gifts of what has been, what I consider cultural damage of not recognizing these pathways of knowledge through the unseen and like non-cause-and-effect-y kind of things. So I just wanted to add that.
Yeah, that is actually quite important. I think one of the burdens that many of us here in the West are carrying is this story of orphanhood, right? And when these things start to happen, and they're like, one of the teachers I had once said, what's your undeniable proof that magic is real? Right. And it's one of my favorite questions to ask people. And so like once these things start happening, and there's no way that it's not a synchronicity. Like, it's just like, it's too clear, right? That story of, I don't belong. I don't have a place. It starts to fall away, right? It's like, I do have a place. I have a place of belonging. And I start to practice feeling that sense of belonging to my people, to my lineages, to my ancestors. Like, I have a place. It's right here. I belong. And so that story becomes less and less, like, we can try and tell it, but it's just not so effective anymore. And it's like, what happens when we actually feel that sense of belonging? Like, then what do we become capable of doing? So just wanting to jump on your bandwagon with that a little bit. Yeah. Cool. Does it feel okay to talk about sex a little bit?
Yeah, I'd love to.
Okay. Yeah. Because I mean, like, I imagine that everybody listening has had sex dreams. And maybe even like sex dreams or erotic dreams with ancestors. And, my own belief about erotic energy is that it is that pleasure is a healing force in the body. That when we turn our attention to what feels good, what feels pleasurable, whether it's sex or sensuous delights, or like kind of just like when our focus is on the good, that is a healing movement, right? And so that there's a lot of healing to be found in the erotic, and in cultivating relationship with the erotic. So I'm curious, we've spoken a lot about healing with ancestors in dreams. What do you think about erotic dreams, and how could they be healing?
Yeah, great question. The first thing that comes to mind is around what you said about pleasure being healing. One thing about dreams is that they can really surprise you and sometimes bring forth things that have been missing. And I think that erotic dreams, pleasurable erotic dreams, foremost can be healing because they can really bring up the vitality of the sense of erotic pleasure in an embodied way that you may have forgotten in your waking life. I really see the erotic and sexuality being tied to, if not the same thing, as your vital life force as a human being, including creativity, pleasure, just the wellspring of vitality that flows through your sex center and your whole being as a birthright of being a human. And erotic dreams can just immediately dip you back into that if you haven't been identifying with your own sense of erotic wellness. If you have an awesome sex dream, you're just immediately plunged back into the rightful relationship with feeling erotic pleasure and power as this vital sense. I know not all erotic dreams are like that, and I think that they can. I think maybe that's the best kind of erotic dream, where it's just you're feeling this real raw sexuality that is you being in your sexual power and pleasure, and that is healing to be reminded of that, and to be not only reminded of that, but to be experiencing that. in your sleep state is, I think, just healing. I think I agree with you that those eroticism is healing energy. And then there's all kinds of erotic dreams, like, of course, our old buddy, or not buddy, Sigmund Freud had a lot to say about erotic dreams and kind of made everything into sexuality. And I like to look at the kind of history of dreaming. Like, there's this funny story. There's this huge book called the Onira Critica, which means interpretation of dreams, from ancient Greece, well, from like 2nd century AD Greece, written by Artemidorus, who went all around the Mediterranean for several decades, recording people's dreams and figuring out a system of interpretations for dreams. And this is considered a dream omen book, which means that the interpretations are all prophetic interpretations. So it would be like, oh, if you dream this, that means this. And there's a huge section on erotic dreams, and it's all very practical. And it's like, if you're having sex with your mother from the front, of course, it's oriented toward males. There's a small sections on if you're a woman having this dream, blah, blah, blah. But it's pretty patriarchal document, but also interesting. And so if you have sex with your mother from the front, like missionary style, that means that you will have good relationships and successful business dealings in your homeland. So it's equating mother with homeland and like sex as a healthy relationship, healthy integration. And it goes on and on like that for all these different things. And I think that's interesting too, because I think one way that erotic dreams can be healing is as sex and dreams of different kinds of sex as metaphors of different kinds of integration and relationship, of coming together, of integrating parts of yourself or emotions. And those are also really healing. And I think integrations and self-acceptance and things like that often come in the form of erotic dream imagery, because it's such a way that we understand of this really basic coming together as humans. So I think that a lot of erotic dreams are probably working on that level as well. Sort of lost track of your specific question. Actually, I just started going off about erotic dreams.
It's great. I love it. I think that there could be a lot of riffing here.
Yeah.
Right? On erotic dreams and kind of the role that they play in our lives. I mean, I just feel it's such a blessing. Whenever I have an erotic dream, I'm like, oh yeah.
Yeah.
Whew. Glad that that's available.
Or then when you have one and then you see the person you had it about the next day and you're like, wow, I'm operating on a completely different level than you are right now. Yeah. In our relationship.
That could totally be awkward too. Yeah, Seyta, it's just been so great to have you here on Bespoken Bones. I want to direct people. You have a website, which is www.innerlands.org. It's INNERLANDS, innerlands.org. Mm-hmm. And you also hold a monthly ancestor circle in Olympia and in Portland.
Right.
I'm imagining folks can find that on your website, as well as doing the ancestral lineage healing repair work and dream. I don't know are you a dream coach?
Yeah, I like to do embodied processes with people in dreams. Okay. Yeah, so leading kind of depth processes for people, not really like interpreting dreams, but processes with dreams. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
engaging with dreams in an embodied way. And maybe even helping people dream better.
Yeah,
is that a thing?
Yeah.
Okay. So anyway, it's been great having you here. Such a delight, as always, to spend time with you. And I just want to thank everybody for listening to this episode. And if you feel particularly inspired by what you've heard, I'd like to invite you to my website, which is trancestralhealing.com. Trancestral, like transcestors, ancestors with trans people. Trancestralhealing.com. And you can learn more about the ancestral healing lineage lineage healing that I offer. And if you're in the San Francisco Bay Area, another colleague, Taya Shear, and I have started offering monthly ancestor circles as well. So feel free to check out any of that. I'd love to hear your questions about anything that comes up on the podcast, anything ancestral. I'd love to hear who you want to hear on the show. So feel free to drop me a line. I am Pavini Moray. This is Bespoken Bones, and we will be back every full and new moon with more embodied goodness and ancestral wisdom.